Welcome to On Comics, the only podcast bold enough to say, yes, comics count as reading. I'm Omar, and with me is my sequential art senpai, Colin. Today, in our first episode, we're asking a big one. Why read comics? Are they an underrated storytelling powerhouse, or just a really expensive way to look at cool drawings? Let's find out.
Oh man, you remember that meme that was going around from that Civil War movie with Jesse Plemons with the gun? What kind of comics fan are
Yes.
you? It's like,
Yeah.
I don't want to fucking talk to you about how Squirrel Girl is DEI. I don't want to fucking talk to you about how whatever fucking Miles Morales is woke or whatever.
All of that, dude.
I don't want to talk about any of that. I kind of don't. There's like this other like kind of more Reddity side of
Yes.
I think of like Image Comics where right now, where it's like everything is a 12-issue miniseries pitched for a Netflix series, and
It seem like it's just meant like they're being churned out for that.
yeah, it's storyboarded, and it's like all you can really call it is like genre. And it's like, is it sci-fi? Is it horror? It just all kind of has that tone to it. And these are creator driven and made and everything, but it's like, there's people who are like really excited about that.
Yeah.
Like I like Saga from what I read of it. I have not to like pick on that, but like there's people where it's like that's what they care about. I can't fucking talk to you about like I don't.
Yeah.
It's the like creator side of it is like really rare to hear someone like kind of, and if someone's too superhero-y, they're boring. If someone's like pure artsy, they're boring. It's like it's such a strange. And then there's just people who read way more comics than you and me, and it's all manga,
Dude, exactly.
and it's like I can't say anything about that. Like they're in the trenches, they're doing the reading,
They're going in.
and but it's like I have nothing to talk to you about. We have no shared frame of reference.
There is like you're saying with the genre. It's kind of interesting to me to like think of like starting points. Like how did people get into comics and then lead into like what led them into certain spaces, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean the theory should be like the biggest movies in the world, the most popular films that have the characters on them would lead to the books, but I mean that's I don't know, I guess the companies have kind of like just made that leap too hard to get to do,
Yeah.
And I guess I sympathize with them because it's like, yeah, where do you start with Batman? Where do you start with, any of these messy characters? And unfortunately, the answer is not like what's on the shelf right now.
Right. Exactly.
And then it's like, well, okay. And in a weird way, it's almost like, yeah, buy this $125 omnibus is actually more of a bargain and more of a deal than spend $5 on 18 pages that you'll finish in 8 minutes of some fucking storyline that's so intertwined right now. You will not notice any of the characters.
That's the kind of, I feel like, thing that's maybe lost, like how they used to say it on Kayfabe a ton, like how the head of Marvel was like, every comic should
someone's first comic.
Yes.
And so you should be able to get into it in that way. But at the same time, when you read, even like kind of celebrated books like A Craven's Last Hunt or like Frank Miller's Daredevil, all these like really celebrated works, still the first page, it's like, man, I'm Matt Murdock and I'm a lawyer and I'm blind. Yeah. This is crazy that I'm involved in this situation with the Kingpin who did this last issue. And like,
it feels sort of unnatural in a way.
Completely. And I understand that it works, but then it also, when you're reading it as a collected work, it's like, these kind of like it I don't know, it ceases to be art, I guess, and it is more
commercial.
It is like, oh yeah, this is an editorial mandate that Spider-Man has to say, geez, I know I'm in the middle of this, but I am Peter Parker. I was bitten by a spider, and ever since then, things have been crazy.
Like the fucking, what is that shit of like, it feels very of like a old school time of like,
those movies from like the 30s or something.
Oh yeah, it's like yeah. See.
Yeah, like the preamble, I guess. Like
Right,
you're saying. But all right, well.
Yeah, we said this is too good. This is too good.
Yeah, Dan, we're kind of heating up. So I guess we'll just start from here. It's a new comics podcast. I'm starting. My name is Omar. I'm just a local chill guy, just trying to talk comics. Here I have Colin.
Hey, I'm a local, not chill guy. Also here because Omar told me to talk comics at him, so I'm going to be yelling at him about comics.
I'm absolutely elated. I cannot wait to get yelled at about comics. It's my favorite shit.
I was thinking of like names for it, and I was like, sick. We are excited to talk to you about comics would be a very funny name, but it's also something if it goes more than one episode, we're gonna really hate. So definitely, I'm scratching that off the list before we start.
That one's next.
Yeah,
that one's next.
That said, we are excited to talk to you about comics.
It is, I guess, one of the central themes, I would say.
Sure.
But I mean, yeah, I guess I would like to start off by asking you maybe what got you into comics. I know that's such a
right. This is a story of my life, if you want. So I've always kind of seen this connection. To me, the connection between music and comics has always been really clear. To me, it's always been kind of a nerdy thing because I swear, and this is going to sound like hyperbole or something, but I liked the song Iron Man from the group Black Sabbath when I'm like, a single digit age.
Yeah.
And I was like, I got to know more about this Iron Man fella. And yeah, I just walked into my mom's like, well, if you want to see comics, because I'm of the age where we still had spinner racks at the grocery store and stuff.
Oh, dude.
And technically, first comic I bought was this issue of What If with
no way.
Yeah, it was like a What If issue featuring Storm. It was like, what if Storm had remained a thief or something like that. You'd think I would have remembered it if it was like the first thing I bought.
It's one of those like parallel universe kind of things.
The whole what if comics was always like, here's a hypothetical situation. What if ...
Yeah.
Hence the title. What if the radioactive spider had bitten Mary Jane instead? And then you get a little single issue, which, to the point of, a logging on of comics, like what ifs were kind of awesome because they were so self-contained.
Yeah.
And if all you understood about a character was like, a toy you had or something like that, you get to see the toy being another toy or...
And it's a living, kind of breathing, almost
and
imagine.
And yeah, it's not like, you're picking up an issue of X-Men and it's like, what the fuck? There's a 13-year-old girl who's been in a dimension for how long now? All right. Fucking okay. No, it was like the What If comics were perfect. So that was like my grocery store pickup. And then my mom was like, well, if you like this shit, let's go to a dedicated comic shop. And there was a comics gallery in Escondido when it was still on, I think it was Broadway in the same shopping center as the Albertsons. Shout out to my Escondido heads. This is going worldwide, so I need to get very hyper specifically regional. Anyway, so we went to the comics gallery and it was just like, a whole store of comics, and it was like, I don't know. There's something about that effect on a kid just seeing that where it's like, all right, it's fucking on now.
Yeah.
And I think I got an Iron Man comic. So would have been like probably early, like late 80s or early 90s. Well, I'll just lie and say 1990s for the sake of. So whatever the hell was happening in Iron Man at that point, which again, I'm just like grabbing something off the shelf. And I think it was a Punisher issue where he fought the Reavers.
Yes, dude.
And it was, don't ask me why I got that one, but the Iron Man was definitely to learn more.
The cover was probably sick.
About the Sabbath about the Sabbath song, which it was actually just about that. So I was, mission accomplished. No, it wasn't about that. I soon had to figure out slowly that things had shifted and there's more going on to the world than that. But yeah, and kind of since then it's always been like a part of my life.
Yeah.
But yeah, in a very natural, organic way, I guess you would say.
I mean, and it all stemmed from music first, kind of.
Yeah, and so I've always sort of, and like it's almost, if I had to write a story, that would be like, it seems like something that would be, you probably wouldn't believe it if it was in a book because it's so corny, But like, yeah, I've always kind of like music specifically like punk or hardcore or something. It has this like, I don't know, it's supposed to be this like edgy life, rock and roll kind of thing, and it's supposed to be very like dangerous and like antisocial and cool, especially cool. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And then comics, especially if you can go back to the era that I mentioned, was like very dorky and lame. But
I imagine at that time it was still only bought by like.
Well, we were right on the cusp of the boom. So we're right on the cusp of like the news
1990.
talking about the death of Superman and the speculator market and all
Wow.
that. I'm like right before then, which has its own kind of thing. So ironically, it was actually like I was in at the right time because I'm about to watch, Jim Lee do commercials for jeans and shit.
Dude, I just saw the Rob Liefeld one.
Yeah.
And that was fucking amazing.
Yeah, no, I just would see that on TV and like,
Insane.
Yeah, that was it. Basically, what I'm getting at is I've always felt like I never saw rock and roll or music or anything like that as something that was like, here's my cool thing. I was always like, well, I'm a nerd for this shit. I'm like, I'm a nerd for Star Wars. I'm a nerd for video games. I'm a nerd for, all of this other stuff. I'm also a nerd for, punk music too. And, records and stuff. And like the difference being like, it's all, like the comic book guy from The Simpsons is not like a stereotype based on nothing, Back then, like, around when the show was coming out, it was like, I know that guy is very real. Like, it's not
totally in reality.
Yeah, and it's still that genome is still with us in the culture. But it was at the time. They're supposed to be so disparate, but to me, it's just like, you're all just fucking nerds.
It's all just nerd. It's a nerdy notion.
Yes.
All of that kind of stuff.
Obsession over art, if you want to be forgiving.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say that the cool factor is why most people get into that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you want to get laid and have a place, but I guess to me it was like I had a place with nerd stuff already, so it was like, I don't know. Obviously, I'm underplaying it when you're at a concert or a show, or like you start to meet people in bands and you start to like make networks with like your local music community. As a young person, that is like you get to play in bands and stuff. But then again, as a kid, I was like also making comics and like,
dude,
like to me, again, part of that, like part of the Rob Liefeld on, doing jeans commercial thing was like such an emphasis at the time on creators. And that was like huge to me, going to cons and like going to like signings and stuff and like meeting these people, and like very clear to me that like there were normal dorky dudes drawing and making this stuff. It wasn't like some magical thing came down from heaven. And again, I think at that point there was a much heavier emphasis on the creator than IP or branding or
those guys broke that mold, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Well, there was always superstars like your Frank Millers and your Burns and your Steranko's,
like Alan
and
Moore
stuff.
and shit like that.
There's always, and even like in fanzines and stuff going way back, people were geeking out over Carl Barks Duck Comics and stuff like this. There's always been a fandom for sure, but I think like I could understand being, I'm picturing like one of those, a kid like pushing one of those wheels with a stick down the road in the 50s with like the propeller hat. I don't know why to me that's what a 50s kid has to look like, but I could see if you were getting into comics at that time, you would maybe not exactly know who, the Carmine Infantinos and
the deep baseball, like
or even like the
shit.
people who drew whatever the comics were, like I understand being a kid not knowing the names then, but that was not an option in the 90s because they were like, yo, this is the new comic from Jim Lee. You're going to know who the fuck Jim Lee is. And
this is our guy right now.
And likewise, going to shows, seeing bands and stuff, and like with especially once I found my way into like punk music and seeing local bands, it's like, oh, the guy gets on stage and he just fucking talks to you and he's standing around. And it's like, oh, the guy who drew New Warriors is at the mall signing
fucking
books.
dude. Yeah.
It's like, it I don't know. I guess it was very eye-opening about, the way you could engage in the art and kind of make it yourself, or that maybe it wasn't, presented from the gods on high, but rather was a medium to be fucked with, I guess. And that goes for music and comics for me.
It's almost like, so I'm like a huge fan of outsider music.
Right.
It's like that time that you were coming up in, it's almost like the outside started to kind of be contextualized into the inside kind of thing.
Oh, it was very much like, didn't Daniel Johnston have a record on Geffen?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was.
I think it was 1990.
Honestly, probably those years. Yeah.
Like literally, it's probably 1990.
Although like, man, it's such a strange time to like. When were you born? What year?
92.
92. Okay, so I'm speaking of ancient words that are gonna elude you, but like to go on QVC, which for those also born in 1992 was like a TV channel on the television where they would usually hawk like dishwares and like home goods or whatever, and all of a sudden there's like, we got lithograms of Supreme.
No fucking way. That's
like,
insane.
They would like, and I would tune into that stuff. And actually, I think, foreshadowing, we're going to address that in some of the books we're going to talk about later today. Yeah. But to see like comics on the Home Shopping Network and stuff like that
that isn't.
But that was the only world I knew. I didn't have, again, being born in 81, it wasn't like I had a whole lot of time in like the, fanzine trenches or anything. But I was still able to, drive up and park at Comic-Con and walk in.
So sick.
And get to see anything I want. And no one, gets, there was, no one was... Like Matt Groening just sitting around and getting to walk up and be like, draw me something. And you go, okay.
Yeah.
Like that, like actual fan era,
Like when you are face to face with the person. Like you were saying, like at the shows. Playing shows now, it's crazy how things come from like, there's artists that I really looked up to that I was able to get on a bill with.
Yeah.
And eventually just seeing, these are people.
Yeah.
These are other flesh and blood homies.
There's probably a level of, fame and stardom where that stops, that barrier probably is there and they do become a little maybe more guarded or something to where they are kind of not normal people to interact with. But like, I think that is very rarefied air. Generally speaking, most artists, creators and whatnot are just so happy to talk about what they do or just not, I don't know. There's just if you have an idea in your head of some artist being so unobtainable or just out of range, it's like, no, they're generally not. It's generally not the case,
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, how should I say it? It's like you're putting people on a pedestal.
Right.
Just because it's when I was younger, totally like I would be like, dude, my favorite comic growing up was Bone.
Oh yeah.
That was my first comic. And I'm just thinking like, dude, this guy must be some insane like philosopher of life.
Yeah.
But then recently getting back into comics, I saw an interview, or he did a stream.
Okay, yeah.
And he's just like, Jeff Smith is his name.
Yeah.
He's literally just drawing and talking about his dog.
Yeah.
Just like a dude.
That's a great case of someone who like does not have a financial concern as far as his art goes. He can do anything he wants at his own pace.
He was fully, and he's one of the most successful guys in the game, right?
Hands down. And like, accomplished in the sense of like, he doesn't need to make a single line on another sheet of paper in his whole life. And he is an absolute legend, for one book. Well, there's that Basil?
Yes, it's like the series before or the series right
I
after.
thought it was after, but I could be tripping. But yeah, no one fucking cares.
Yeah,
doesn't
it's
matter,
like it
'cause
doesn't matter.
He's the guy that did Bone, for God's sakes. Like, yeah, again, he's a legend for that. So, as someone born in 1992, how do you come across the Bone comics? If that's your first comic.
I didn't. So we lived in downtown. It was just my mom and I, and she would go to school at SDSU. So I would end up going to the library with her.
Yeah.
And at the library, I mean, there's only one little kid section.
Right.
That was it was all like, I think at that point when I was going, it was like a full collected series of Bone or like one volume.
Yeah.
But like you said earlier, the Carl Barks stuff was there.
Oh yeah.
Calvin and Hobbes was there.
Yeah.
So it was more of like I would say like the scholastic education.
Yeah. And in a weird way, that's probably a better introduction to comics than what's, on a comics rack right now.
Dude.
Arguably than what was on a comics rack in 1990, but still.
Yeah. I mean, so it's interesting. Like I think we were talking earlier about like how people navigate getting into comics,
right.
And then how they like, you choose your lane, I guess.
Yeah.
But is it more of like, at the risk of sounding philosophical, is it like, do those tastes shape you, or like, did you like you said, Iron Man got you in?
Yeah.
Like, was that like, do you still hold true to that, or has it like evolved or changed?
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess I'll always have like a soft spot for I'll never be too cool for like Punisher comics. That's my the sad reality is I fucking love Punisher. Like if I have a character who I'm like all in on, it's that, which is a really unfortunate place to be at right now. Like I can't necessarily rock a T-shirt or anything.
Right. I mean,
a guy shooting guns at you, it's not really the best look.
We're talking about the co-opted Punisher logo.
Yeah,
I'm sure everyone's familiar with.
Not exactly a cool sticker to slap on the back of your car or anything, but it's like honestly, like Chuck Dixon's writing back then. It's just pure coked up like action hero movie insanity. Like I don't know. I understand. I'm like inside his mind when he's writing that stuff. Like I totally get where he's coming from. It's I don't know. I guess it's a level of like kind of white knuckled comics that I appreciate, but other stuff, again. I was like, just being shoved down my throat, like the Ultraverse and Valiant stuff, and like all of those are
Ultraverse.
Yeah, like trying to reread that stuff now, it's just like, oh yeah, no. Like there's a certain kind of nostalgia for sure. But so what happened from eventually, I just picked up an issue of Hate.
Oh, nice.
And once you start cracking into the independent stuff, it was like, forget about it. And there was this thing called the Alternative Press Expo, or APE, in San Francisco, which if you read enough indie comics from the mid-90s, you'll probably see like ads for. And that was this even deeper level than Comic Con, because it was just like real independent comics people. Like, and it was just, I don't know, seeing people sell their like mini comics, and like the Too Much Coffee Man guy was probably the biggest guy there, like it was so ground level. And once I got, started to read, I don't know, real people comics, for lack of a better word, it was like, as a youth especially, I'd be like, okay, I can't read the Max anymore. Like I can't let people know I'm into this stuff anymore. And like, I think like a lot of people, you take a little break and then you come back, and probably like in the early 2000s, I was like, I would only buy like, if it was, Klaus or Bag or like whatever the Fantagraphics guys were. It was like, if it's not like a trade from those guys, I'm not going to even look at it. And then like I got into Alan Moore, which is always a name I heard, but it was like, you're too young for Alan Moore, kid.
Like so it was like, almost like, this is the smart man's comic or something.
Yeah, I was like, and in all fairness, I don't think you should give a 12-year-old an Alan Moore comic.
There's some nuance. There is some that he's trying to kind of depends on the comic.
You could probably hand him a Watchmen. I may have been able to grasp Watchmen. If I was reading Sandman, I think I could have figured out Watchmen. But even reading Sandman, though, I didn't really like understand it at the time. It was just such a big comic, and it was like
modern mythology and kind of
I wanted
stuff.
But I was too young for it. But yeah, in like the early 2000s, I read Watchmen, and that just cracked my brain open. To this day, I would say it's such a cliched answer, but that is my favorite comic. Like I reread it religiously. Like I try to reread it every year, but I don't know if I actually do. And like
even just crack it open sometimes, and like
I got to go start to finish. I got to get the whole thing.
Sick.
And like if I, if anyone's asking like what do I start with? Like, Watchmen, self-contained story. It is to me the pinnacle of like specifically comics writing. You know, like get into panel to panel transitions and all the little sneaky things that are in there.
The kind of understated pieces that make comics its own thing. I think it exemplifies all that shit.
Absolutely, the splash pages, the layouts, and it's like it's shit that you don't even need to care about at all to appreciate it because it's a decent story. And like I don't know, it's pure magic, that book, and that was like made me say, okay, well, maybe I can read comics. Maybe I can go back and you go back to your Frank Millers and your John Burns, and you're like, actually, no, these motherfuckers were cooking. So
dude, John Byrne, I didn't get it before.
Yeah,
and only recently have I been like, because back in the day I kind of thought it was ugly in a sense.
Yeah.
Like,
well, he has different eras. If you're reading Next Men, I could see.
Yeah, shit. I think that's when I started.
Yeah,
that's what was coming out when I first understood it was a John Byrne comic.
Right.
And I was like, really, this kind of stuff?
But man, there's kind of like this line, I guess, where it's like there's junk comics, and then there's like the fantagraphic, scary groth like art. Well, Robert Crumb's kids kind of.
Yeah, I would say everyone that goes through Fantagraphics has like this reverence for Crumb.
Yeah,
I like Crumb myself.
Yeah,
I'm more of a Basil Wolverton guy.
Okay, yeah.
Who like I just kind of grew up with those cartoons, like
right. More exaggerated face. Well, I don't know. It's not like Crumb's not a cartoonist, but it's definitely. I'm never gonna like argue Crumb for someone. I'm a Crumb guy. That said, if you look at my Klaus and my Bags and my Hernandez brothers gonna outweigh my Crumb stash probably 10-1.
Yeah.
But like it all, you have to respect that it all kind of comes from.
Oh, for sure.
And as a craftsman, I understand why he's like the guy who's still in those like high art spheres, and why he never ever is going to do a con or like bend a knee to like fanboy bullshit. Like he's earned it all. Robert Crumb is forever that bitch. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, for sure.
I forgot.
You cannot deny him.
So there's this line where you start to become that school of comics, and then there's the line where you're dummy superhero stuff. And I feel like John Byrne's stuff is about, and I probably put like George Perez in this camp too, where it's like about as good as you can get. Like
Dead Man stuff?
Yeah, or Perez's Wonder Woman is like amazing.
Shit.
Did
he do Wonder Man as well?
I don't know. I'm out of my depth on that one. Or his Wonder Woman, and I think did he do Crisis on Infinite Earths? Someone will check us on that, I guess.
Would that be? Is there Mignola in there somewhere?
I don't know. I think that's George Perez, if I'm not tripping. But regardless, besides the fact, those guys in terms of like form, and Neil Adams is in there too as just like a just craft or whatever. Well, no, that's not fair, because the Burns and the Perez's are the sons of Neil Adams, so they are about as good as comics can get, while still being firmly and squarely superhero comics.
Right.
You are not going to be like, hey, this isn't a comic. It's very much so a comic.
Definitely.
And like, I don't know, I would maybe put like if that's the most craft you can put before it starts to become art.
Right.
Maybe the most art, maybe like the least amount of art you can get, where it's like just barely artsy, but it's still like, I don't think, again, Robert Crumb. That's a fucked up question. Has Robert Crumb read a Frank Miller comic?
That is an interesting question. I bet you he has.
Because to me, he's
or would he care?
It is we will never know. But Frank Miller to me is like that is like it is almost something else. It is just that is the page turn of becoming something else. His superhero stuff, obviously.
Yeah.
When you get into like Sin City and Ronin and whatnot, you're kind of in your own zone.
I mean,
you're in your own zone there.
Well, that would be like he's a pulp artist.
Yeah, and that's like, I mean, Ronin is very like heavy metal, which isn't in itself is kind of in that weird middle ground, right?
Of like uber art to kind of
there's still titties and barbarians.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, tech speak and stuff. So it's not exactly bound to. It's not. I forget her first name. Bechdel, the one who did
Alison Bechdel.
Alison Bechdel.
Yeah.
Like that is like, okay, if you hate comics, read Alison Bechdel, because it's like that's like so far. Like again, as Alison Bechdel read a Frank Miller comic, we'll never know.
See, and that's like kind of the beauty of it, of like why this space is so big,
right?
Like I think hers are more like slice of life almost,
or I mean auto bio, I guess you could call it.
Yeah. Which I love that kind of shit.
Yeah, of course. And
give me a boring comic and I'm happy.
Oh yeah, no, I'm like, to me that's like the easy pitch for me.
Yeah.
And in a weird way, like I said, I had to kind of start looking at like the absolute Mount Olympuses of superhero creators before I could like really appreciate superhero comics again.
Yeah.
After doing the Fantagraphics deep dive, and I'm still that's where I hang my hat. Like I'll just go to the library and check out any Fantagraphics Drawn and Quarterly, like
all that stuff is gold.
Yeah, and no, it's not. Actually, a lot of it is absolute fucking bullshit.
Trash.
Absolutely. But that's what a library is for. You check it out, you see if it's good, and then, luckily I have a library that's cool enough to stock that kind of stuff. So, and even if I didn't, you could just go on the Palomar local community college campus. I don't know. Maybe we're super spoiled, like being in a very...
We might be.
You
can check out comics on the library website now.
That's
on
true.
the Vista Library website, I think.
And there's what's that? There's this there's that app where you can read from like libraries.
Pretty much every
Libby, I think it's called, if I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it is Libby.
And that's like you check out comics and just read them on your tablet, and it's weird with the digital stuff. I'll never understand this. It's like I understand it, but I don't. They're like, okay, you're in line to check out this. Bro, this is ones and O's, dog.
It's like a PDF, man.
Yeah, come on. Like
relinquish the PDF.
Yeah, fucking Read Comix online is like right there, bro. Like,
you want me to do this the clean way?
I'm just trying to dodge some spyware, man. Like, come on now. But that said, I don't think you need to even. Yeah, there's not like, we don't need to just blindly pick stuff up now. You can kind of read whatever you want for free, and then buy it if it really moves you or something.
Yeah.
But I'm still, that's where I'll go. I got recommended, someone recently actually was like, because I'll kvetch about like, I don't understand what this superhero shit's about right now. Like, don't talk to me about what's going on. I
also don't.
And this guy was just like, you know what? You should read Tom King comics, the writer. And I was like, and I had actually read that Visions comic. There's this comic about Vision, the Avenger.
Whoa.
And it was like really cool. And I was like, oh, and I had just picked it up kind of randomly a long time ago. And I was like, oh, that's a great comic. And that was him. And then I started reading these other comics, and to me, he's kind of like a modern analog to like maybe not like a Frank, maybe I'm not even going to give him an Alan Moore, but in that like
somewhere kind of approaching that more serious tone, in a sense,
or just like not even serious, just fucking well done, just competent, just not whatever horseshit just gets cranked out of the mill,
Yeah. When I think of Alan Moore, I think he has a complete picture in his head.
Oh yes.
And he knows how to translate it in a sense.
I mean, people who don't love Alan Moore hate people talk about Alan Moore who like him, but
Right.
like I fucking love Alan Moore, bro. I will talk.
I do
Alan,
too, man.
He approaches comics on such a such an advanced level that's like if you're putting anyone against his stuff, it's not a good comparison. I like literally don't know of one, even your Grant Morrisons, your Neil Gaimans, whoever's celebrated person. It's like, I mean, maybe Dave Sim, but then he's an artist, and he's not like, it's a little different than strictly being a writer. But anyways, Tom King is a very good modern superhero comics artist. He's very good, but
I'll have to check him out. I don't dive in too much to the modern stuff.
yeah, it's because it's for good reason, and I think his is like. Again, it was great advice someone gave me because it's his. If I just pick up anything from him, it is accessible enough, and it isn't so bound in, just whatever the continuity is of the modern era, to where you can kind of like, all right, we're up and running, we're good to go.
Like that's he's not just keeping those wheels greased.
Exactly, and like. There's not a lot of people like that. I have no second guy to tell you like, oh, their stuff is great, because I've read even like pretty celebrated writers who have done really good stuff in the past, and I'll pick up something that they do now, and I'm just like, yeah, this ain't it, King.
Yeah.
Or like, I mean, there's like Chip Zdarsky's and stuff who are like, people know they're not superhero comics guys.
Yeah.
So when they do a superhero comic, it's like an alternative comics guy kind of coming to the superhero world instead of like in the trenches writer for fill in the blank big two.
And
title.
like how we were saying, or how you were saying earlier, it's like they're almost following formula at that point in a sense.
Yeah, I cannot tell you what modern like monthly comics is for. Like the numbers are gross, like as far as what they move, it's like it's weird for a corporate product to be that low in. You understand if it was like indie musicians or like a YouTube channel that makes like horror shorts or something like that, and it's like if they get, let's say this fictional channel gets like 10,000 views, it's like I understand why you would keep making that. It's a pretty low number, but like artistically I could see how it's satisfying, and maybe there's a way through Patreon and whatnot you can keep the doors open and pay for itself, like cool. Or even don't, like you don't have to make money doing shit, you can just create for fun. But for a corporate product to be selling 10,000
level,
20,000 issues of a physical printed book, and like because those numbers are so low, they have to be in the like $5+ zone for them. And like there's part of the pacing of modern comics that I like modern superhero comics, where like it does take about 8 minutes to read an issue, and like bang for your buck wise, that fucking sucks, because
dude, $5, that's a good amount of money to ask.
I mean, a regular movie is 90 minutes and it's $15 to see.
Right. Or fucking $5 on certain days, Yeah,
exactly. And that's if you want to go to the movie theater and watch it proper, like as far as entertainment goes, like if it takes me under 10 minutes to read your comic, like I can't, there's no fucking way you can justify charging that much money for it.
$5.
The alternative is like, I understand. I've like gone through the X-Men runs, or like I'm like 75% done to Claremont's X-Men run.
Nice.
And I understand like it's not fun to read that super dense like Kitty Pryde as an X-Men. You're one of the best people ever, and you have been gone in this dimension for so long. I don't know how I feel about it. And then she's got a thought bubble, and it says something. Or even like going back to Tales from the Crypt comics, like old EC stuff. Like, they were kind of coming from like this is a pulp novel audience, So
On this episode of The Crypt Keeper.
Or it's just like, he walked like the yellow narrator bubble above the panel.
Yeah.
Like walking into the room, it was cold as ice and he felt a chill creep up his neck. It was a ghastly chill, one he hadn't felt since how many days. And the word bubble, he's like, cold as head, super cold in here. I don't know if I can take much more of this. That gold better be worth it. And the next panel, same amount of text. Like, it's dense and it's not like fun to read. I get it.
They keep hammering that idea.
Yeah, and it's a little flowery, and I mean, just I don't know. This is a tangent, I guess, but it's just like, they're talking. They're bound by their era and all that. And it's just
you could argue they were figuring it out.
Okay, they were figuring it out, absolutely. And I think in where we're at now is like instead of they'll just show you all of those words I just said will just be will be one panel of a person, with their arms crossed, and they'll be shivering, maybe a thought bubble that says "burr," and that's all you'll get.
And that's what you need.
And thus, you can turn the page quicker, and thus it's over faster, and you have now read a comic.
Yeah, I guess is that like so. I guess the crux of this episode was why read comics,
right?
And I think that there's a lot of things about comics, like in that sense of like where they've just been turned into sort of a product, like you said, just a product.
Or it's just, really they're playing with this habit and addiction that a very niche group of men generally have, which is just going to the store every Wednesday and picking up their floppies,
Yeah.
And there's nothing, again, the economics of it will make me pull my hair out, but whatever it is, it's what it is. But that weird habit and that weird economy sort of dictates the quote unquote mainstream.
It ripples into it in a sense. So what we did this week is we traded stuff to read, and that almost leads into like in the Elting Bill Club that you let me borrow. It was like the fandom. That's like when you're getting into fandom specifically, and it's about the IP.
Yes.
And it's not really about the actual thing.
Yeah.
The actual comic. It's about the overarching feeling that the IP gives the fan.
And oddly, that's when I talked about like getting into comics, that's kind of why I felt so blessed to get in that era, because it was so creator driven. And it's strange to me now to see the pivot from that, where like when I was a kid, I thought it was like, I was a collector, I guess. And like I loved Sam Keith. So I wanted all the Sam Keith art, so I was tracking down like Kamiko primers and like those early Sandmans he did and like Alien comics and stuff. Like that to me was hot.
Yeah.
And, when you look at like what makes a comic hot now, it's like, well, this was the first appearance of the girl version of Thor who's going to have her own movie soon. And it's like, that's is a key issue. That stuff is like in the collector market, what's big. I remember like, oh, these issues of Punisher War Journal are big because it was some of the first Jim Lee art. And like Jim Lee was the cool thing. Now it's like, again, like this esoteric concept. And those are the people keeping the industry alive. That side of the industry, at least. For the big two, you could say. And even, I guess, Image is kind of up there as well. Yeah, to some extent. But they don't, ironically, Image doesn't seem like, for a place founded on creator-driven comics, they don't necessarily know that, like, someone who reads Sex Criminals is going to follow that person writing something else, Yeah. And it's certainly not like, I don't know if collectors, are caring about that sort of thing. So would you say it's not that comics have lost their way? I mean, I know a bunch of like indie creators that like the persistence of vision is still there. Yeah, and a Simon Hanselman, let's say. Yes, exactly. Is never going to be concerned about key issues. Right. And those comics are, I I would imagine outsell, in time.
I feel like they do.
Certainly the single issues and I don't know. I mean, what is a big writer right now, like a Scott Snyder who does all of the Batman stuff? Like, is he? How do you quantify that versus someone who's so different? Like,
would you say Scott Snyder? Well, like this is how I would think of it.
Yeah.
It's like Scott Snyder is their guy right now.
I suppose, or they hate him, You'll never fucking know because. These people who get the most work are like, people on Reddit are just like, they fucking ruined it. They ruined it. I mean, I'm going to keep buying it, obviously.
Yeah.
There's this key issue where he introduced the version of Robin that's going to be in the next Arkham Asylum game. Obviously, I'm looking for a 9.8 of that issue. But still... He fucking ruined it.
Just the incels hate banging these fucking comics.
It is. They hate these guys, but also these guys have like given them their identity. So I don't know.
It's a different world within the same medium.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's It's like you said, difficult to quantify, and where I would argue is like there's a big world out there, not like. You don't have to go into the big two. You don't have to really go into I mean, as much as I want comic shops to pop up everywhere.
Yeah.
And there be like a wide array of genre and just more stories, interesting stories, like good shit.
Yes.
Just shit worth diving into. Which is like kind of what I wanted to explore in how we approach this episode of like why read comics. So I gave you 4 issues of like what I would say isn't the best writing.
I'm interested in as to why we what spoke to you about these guys? Why were you just like this? These are something. I kind of could figure it out as I was going along, but why don't you tell them what you picked?
So let's see. I got you. I went specifically through just what was in my my stash at home. So I got you Girl Crazy #1 by Gilbert Hernandez, which is kind of like a sci-fi weirdo comic. These are all kind of on the sci-fi spectrum, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Or, again, genre.
The genre I went with this week was weirdo outsiders within comics. So I got you like Lobo's Back #1, which is kind of like the background on this one is that he did not want to go back and make more Lobos.
Yeah.
But they pulled him back in, and he kind of did it as like a fuck you to some fans.
Okay.
And
I have some thoughts on that one.
Yeah,
well, I have thoughts on all these, so.
And then I got you Silver Star. I don't even remember which one it was. A visual novel by Jack Kirby. His name's not even on the cover. That's Silver Star 4. And then Shatter 1. Where I was going with this is more of like how a creator can just go raw.
Right.
Like fucking raw dog on these things. And sometimes it's really insulated. Like it's their own world, and maybe you can, like as an outsider, you can pick up on it, but it's just like the weirdos, like the love letter to the weirdos these days.
Yeah, I guess. Well, where do you want to pick one to start with? We'll break it down.
So I definitely want to know your thoughts on on that Jack Kirby.
So this is a weird one. It's PC, which took me way back to actually digging around for Sam Keith Kamiko Primer comics, looking for those off-brand joints in the 90s. That logo I was a Gru head. And Mad Magazine, Sergio Aragonés, they were in my brain big time.
Yeah.
Actually, if we want to be real, I think I probably had a Mad Magazine before I had any other kind of comic. And now it's weird not to think of it as a comic. They worked it because they call it a magazine. You don't even think about it. But stack of Mads at a garage sale. I broke my brain open. realizing you could just, I mean, every 8-year-old should be able to discover Mad on their own. I think it's
at least Spy versus Spy or something.
yeah, like I don't, and it's so funny. I remember reading this. The first one I had this parody of an officer and a gentleman in it, and I was like loving it. I had never seen an officer and a gentleman till like last year. Fucking amazing movie, great
Sick.
flick. But I don't know
yeah.
how I knew it as a Mad Magazine parody before I knew it as a movie itself. But via Sergio Aragonés into Gru
For PC.
into PC, it's a pipeline. But Kirby's stuff is kind of like difficult for me.
Yeah.
Like I like heard the there's like a version of when someone describes Fourth World to you, you're like, oh, he's finally loose. He gets to do his own thing. He gets to write whatever he wants. And then you're like, okay, let's crack this open. And it's like, here's Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen.
Jimmy Olsen.
Okay. And here's some newspaper kids. All right. Like
And you're like, what does this have to do with this fucking interdimensional tesseract?
Yeah, it's like, and I haven't finished it. I got the omnibus. I'm gonna finish it. I swear.
Nice.
I visually, he's everything everyone says he is. When he gets to be Kirby, he's not just doing like westerns or romance comics or whatever.
Yeah.
When he's off the chain, it's insane visually.
When he's cooking, he's cooking.
It's borderline incoherent, like as far as writing goes. Like this is there's a guy called Big Masai who can just turn giant.
He just goes kaiju when he wants.
Oh, they are the Homo geneticus.
Yes.
And this is post Fourth World. So and I think post Demon, right? That was his other DC
Demon
comic.
And the one that he based off of Jim Steranko, which it was like the acrobat guy.
Yeah, what was that?
Who can get out of
he's like the freak or something.
the freak.
Like that.
Yeah, he can get out of stuff with Big Barda and all that kind of shit.
Those were in the Fourth Worlds. The Mr. Terrific and
What the fuck is that guy's name?
I know what you're talking about.
We shall be corrected later.
Yelling at the fucking podcast.
It's late at night, guys. Give us a fucking break out here.
But yeah, this is gibberish. This whole comic is like impossible to read. It's visually perfect, like psychotically beautiful artwork. The colors, like everything about it are amazing. It's about 10 pages long.
Yeah, I think it's super short. There's like a second story in the back that's also kind of wild.
That steamboat bullshit.
It's some weird.
What the fuck is this?
It's an anomaly.
So this is issue 4. Do you have the other issues?
I don't. So I'm the kind of person that picks stuff up on like, especially with these kind of comics. I like I said, outsider music. I like kind of just creator driven things where it's sort of for a person like reading it. Maybe it made sense to Jack Kirby, whatever he was writing. Like maybe it really was so clear to him what was going on. But to me, it's just a beautiful fucking comic.
Because is he trying to build is he trying to have a Fourth World of his again? Because he got kind of DC started fucking with him, so he's like, all right, I'm just gonna build up a new set of people. But like I don't know. I can't question. Arguably, I mean, he is the king of fucking comics. He's the greatest. We're like, as far as output, as far as like quality of his visuals, as far as just like stunning, like that jaw dropping factor, just stunning work. Like there's no one else like Kirby. He's amazing to look at. His comics are borderline impossible to read. There's so
a good amount of that work is so it's easy to visually scan and to like. There is a story there.
Right.
But when you dive into what people are saying.
Is it just him wanting to draw what he wants to draw and just like as an afterthought?
Was it all like Marvel method? Like him just drawing shit and then adding the fucking script later?
Yeah. And like, why not? I mean, I guess I just never understood guys like him. Ditko to some extent broke free with that Mr. A stuff. And his, I don't know if you ever read his like Charleston solo stuff. It's been collected in some really weird ways. Ditko's legacy is like kind of difficult to like pull out. But like the stuff that he got to write and like his early question stuff is like awesome. Like I guess to kind of go off of what you're saying with like outsider artists, I really like to learn something about an artist when they're making anything, music. I want to like, let me into your world. Let me see what you're about.
Like where did this come from?
And like, to go back to X-Men and like Chris Claremont and John Byrne, it's like they are so horny. They are such perverts.
They are, yeah.
It's way worse than Crumb. Crumb is just like, I love big asses. I love big thighs. I'm going to draw these girls with big asses and big thighs.
And he was telling you.
And he's like, I'm horny for girls with big asses and big thighs. That's my thing. I'm a horny guy. Like when you get into this like Chris Claremont shit where it's like, I was mind broken at the sadist club, and now my brain is controlled, and my essence is in a little girl. It's like, you are fucked up, because I don't think...
How the fuck does that happen?
You were doing this within the confines of the comic code, and this is still so gross. This is greasy as shit to me. So, like, when someone tips their hand and like lets you know what they're into through their work, and Ditko's stuff is totally like that with all that fucking Ayn Rand bullshit that he was on.
Yeah, like the black and white. The world is black and white.
Objectivism, like I love it. I don't have that worldview at all, but I love to see someone so singularly obsessed with it that it has to show through in their comics. Even if you look at like his Spider-Man run, how all the bad guys are gross and deformed, and all the good guys are like pure. I think there was this it's a tired I think there might have been in this BBC documentary or like short on Ditko. It might have I think they were talking to all these guys, gassing them up.
In Search of Ditko or something like that.
Yeah, and I think someone was talking about how in that Spider-Man run, he's like, everyone is so stressed out. Like everyone on their faces has anxiety, and like, I don't know. Again, I think those are the kind of like card dip tells that I like to find out about an artist. And I don't really get that with Kirby stuff. Like, I don't think he ever got that, like, or went into that Will Eisner territory where he's just like, I'm going to tell personal stories to me. It's like he mastered the craft. He took it to unparalleled places. And then when he's given the stage for his own to do anything he wants, it's like, these are genetic mega genes. These are my mega genes, and I'm throbbing with power, and I'm going to transform into a, it's still right and wrong stuff. It's still like, okay, this is, and it's a fucking World War II vet. It's a guy that's like combat. It's PTSD.
I think it's tied in with some of that.
Yeah, but it's like, you have to go through so many hoops to justify that, because at the baseline and like without context reading this thing, it is just nonsense.
It's
beautiful nonsense, amazingly crafted nonsense.
An art piece, you could say, but it's also how it's a commercially, like, you can't.
Why is his name Big Masai? That's a terrible name.
What is that name?
You fucking invented the Fantastic Four, like you invented Galactus.
Man.
How do you not come up with at least a good name for a guy that gets big? Big Masai. I 1000% read that as Big Massa for a minute, and I had to like re-correct myself. Like, oh no, he's not going that harsh.
He's going Big Masai.
Yeah, which is that bad? I don't know.
Well, I think he was like you said, he was a broken fella. I mean, he grew up pretty poor. He grew up always kind of fighting for his space in comics, I would say. But he was also just doing what he could. Yeah. Like, I
guess, there's people expect you to do it, but people expect Will Eisner to write a detective story, and he can take you into, I don't know, it's just odd to me that he never kind of got free of that paradigm of writing about guys that transform into things.
I feel like it was really such it probably made sense to him. It's just like one of those things that it's just the metaphor. He was trying to write in metaphors, and I'd like to see what he could have done in like a slice of life kind of setting. Like, what would it be if it was a grounded Jack Kirby story? Yeah. But I think all these guys kind of have to work in that like pastiche,
right?
In that
and
sense.
have to deal with I don't know, the economics of it all. So,
Yeah.
you know, I think Scorsese was like, yeah, I can make any movie I want if it's a gangster movie, but if I want to write, and that's Scorsese saying this, you know, he's like,
Right.
if I want to do something my own, I don't necessarily get funding for it. You know, he has to, even
Very
a
true.
guy at that level still has to, what's the kind of story that these guys are going to let me write
Yeah.
that I think is interesting. So if you're Jack Kirby, it's like, maybe as long as I can fucking sit and draw my comics,
Yeah.
they want a superhero bullshit. I'll give them some superhero bullshit.
Would this be Kirby's like after hours kind of style?
Yeah, this is like, you know, when you would hear about like Dave Chappelle doing like a 4-hour set.
Go off, King.
Yeah, I feel like this is like Kirby just like, you know,
He's
this
just
is
doing what
3.5
Kirby
hours
does.
into his.
That's the thing is like, did he just kind of, he was just going and
I
maybe
guess.
just turn it in and just said, hey, this will be, it says it's a visual novel. So it's like,
Why even say that? It's a chunk comic. It's indistinguishable from
Yeah.
anything else other than the high quality art.
yeah.
And yeah, the fact that his name isn't on the cover. This is definitely an oddity. You knocked it out with that one.
Comics oddity. Was my first pick.
Yeah.
That was like the one that I was like,
I'd like you to hunt down some of these others. I'm not going
know,
to do
man.
it myself. I don't care enough. But
I'm definitely gonna look for a ton of just that weird like I guess like Destroyer Duck is another one of like
yeah, but that was a kind of like you tell me. That was like, oh boy, did Howard the Duck.
Yeah.
And he was like, this is mine. I finally got something of my own under Marvel. And they're just like, just kidding. It's
yeah.
ours. And he's like, all right, fucker. Well, here's Destroyer Duck.
here's this shit now.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, it was kind of like just a copyright workaround thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've never like got into the substance of those stories. I don't know
that
if
kind
they're
of stuff.
Great works.
Man. Well, let's see. I mean
What's next?
most of these were just in creator forward kind of works.
Yes.
And to me, there's this the cool factor is that honestly, they don't make sense to me. The ones that except for
glad
Girl
you said
Crazy,
it, 'cause-
yeah, it's like, but they are just comics that I can just, it's eye candy.
Yeah.
I can just for hours stare at a fucking Gilbert Hernandez comic.
Yeah, you want to talk Girl Crazy next?
Yeah. What do you think about that one?
I mean, okay. Locus Palomar, the Palomar book is like astonishing. His Love and Rocket stuff, great.
Is that Tortilla Soup his as well?
I think so.
Something like
I get
that?
my Hernandez brothers confused all the time.
Yeah.
Don't hold me to it. But no, because that is so good, and
Yeah.
because he is like there is not many black lines in the world of comics that's as strong as Gilbert's. I will, there's always going to be some respect placed on the name first and
Yeah.
foremost, but this is nonsense too. This is equally nonsense. Had you read the comic Blubber?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I have such respect for. I got like maybe 10 pages into that. It was just like, all right, I got it. I'm moving on.
Yeah.
It's like because he's so good, I'll let him do whatever the fuck he wants. If he just wants to draw girls looking pretty and running around in skimpy outfits, like, bro, let him rock. He
Yeah.
gave you some of the most important comics of all time. Have fun dicking around, making weird fucking.
Like what an oddity for him to kind of roll that out.
I mean, I guess knowing enough about him, I don't think it's so. All I could think of when I was reading this was Eraserhead, which is like such a huge movie with like punk people and like at the time and like I guess alternative subculture people, and which is weird. It's like a '70s movie, but in the '80s. It had its stranglehold. I fucking hate Eraserhead. I rest in peace, a legend.
Rest in peace.
I like Dune. Dune is the best movie, one of my best movies all time. I fucking hate David Lynch movies. I think it's just they're not pretentious. They're just like it's like they're just so singularly focused on like hazy memories of childhood in this era where guys had suits and the hats
it's
and
an
stuff.
art piece.
And it's like I understand why this is interesting to you. I am bored to tears with it. I don't care about pinup girls or cheesecake or any of that. And I might just not like surreal art in general.
Right.
I think, the magical realism, which is, the Palomar series, is like, they wrote the book on that. That's great. I'm down for some wacky shit happens within a narrative structure. But as far as just doing whatever goes surrealism, like there's got to be some thread, to me at least, in a comic. I think
Some grounding.
the Frank comics, like
Yes.
those are such a high watermark in
That's where
surrealism.
I think these, like your pick and these, that's a Frank comic to me in that way where it's like it blends that weird kind of like otherworld kind of vibe to it's grounded still.
Right. And I don't know. I think this one is a little too into you're just drawing stuff you like to draw and you're dicking around.
And I think it's another thing of like I think that the idea was way cooler in his mind.
Right.
And then when translating it down, I mean, this is the first of a series of 4.
Yeah.
And I'll say it does have like closure.
Okay.
It does actually have closure, whereas I don't think the others that
Yeah, there is some kind of narrative there, and I guess there's also a little bit of Repo Man as far as like punk movies that like alternative people liked, with like the agencies and all that sort of thing. Why did this other guy draw this muscle girl on the cover?
I think it was he was just fucking vibing. Yeah,
just vibes.
It's just another thing of like the artist is just being artsy.
Yeah, but this is a different artist, isn't it? Who drew the
I think it's
middle girl?
I think it's Beto. I think it's. Oh wait,
I think it's like a different dude entirely who drew this muscle girl in the middle. I don't know if that was. Why is it on Dark Horse? I'm so confused by this comic.
You know what? It might have been colored by a different artist because that's totally a. No, you're right, dude. That's definitely not his.
Yeah,
line.
left and right are all.
These are Beto right here
for sure.
That's
whatever that is. I think he's credited in the inside cover, but it's also just like, why do this?
Dude, that's the first time I'm noticing it. I wanted that to be Beto.
yeah, like he just spent a little more time on it, and like, but yeah, it's. I mean, again, his artwork is always never falters, and it's not like it's the worst thing in the world to look at.
Yeah,
weird cheesecake girls. But it's also boring. I don't know.
It falls flat as far as substance.
Yes,
in that way.
I'll give Miss Innie Hernandez gets to do anything the fuck. They want.
It's like I give him respect. That's I guess that's the crux of this. Is like for me, it's enough to have groovy art. Like let's say like stuff that fits together. If no words were placed on any of these and just the bubbles. And you just imagine what they're saying. Yeah. You fill that shit in. It would still be a great comic to me.
I guess, I don't know. I guess I'm spoiled, or I'm just like maybe I come at it from like this literary angle or something. Like I want there to be like maybe not even a story, but just some technique in terms of writing. And it's like you're right. Yeah, I think your approach is more holistic, where it's just like, look at this cool shit. But it's like when I think of the comics I read more than once, it's like more than cool shit to look at.
I'm not going back to any of these for what they're saying,
One and done, just a blast. Well, what's next? What do you got? We got 2 more.
We got a couple more. So, I mean, same could be said about the Lobo's Back kind of thing. Is I think it was kind of. You said you had some thoughts on this guy?
Yeah, it's interesting to see this in the context, because this was like, this is a blockbuster movie amongst, weird pseudo art house films,
Yes.
And this paid for some people's, it's insane to think now, again, because comics are in such a non-profit space. Yeah. But like, this comic bought some cars. This is one issue. For sure, which is crazy, even under, a mantle. Like, I was trying to figure out, because here's what's on, like, fuck this comic, first of all. Lobo's not very interesting.
It's such a fanboy.
People have like fun with like edgy 90s stuff, and I'm not like gonna shit on anyone's parade.
It's the edgelord of he's the edgelord of comics, I would say.
Yeah, but like a pseudo edgelord, because it's
pseudo, yes.
Like, it's not like, to go back to Alan Moore, like his edgelord stuff is like, oh, this is actually gross. Like
It's fucked up.
when he gets into his like, H.P. Lovecraft bag, or he really wants to warp
Yeah.
you around. When he really wants to go edgelord, it's gross. And this is like, what, you're just saying stupid words and
Yeah.
just, gratuitous violence, but it's like a boring gratuitous violence, or
Right.
it's cartoonish.
It's like the cool teenager.
Yeah, this is definitely like I don't read Superman anymore. I read cool shit like Lobo. So yeah, so Keith Giffen, who is awesome. He's on plot breakdowns. I think most of this is written by Keith Giffen.
I think
most
so
of this
too.
is drawn by Keith Giffen.
Just finished by probably like the Biz and
I think Biz works on some of the central figures, like the Lobos. You can tell he's spending some time on Lobo, and like I think when there's a big splash page, he probably does it. I've read some Trencher, man. I know what Keith Giffen's artwork looks like.
Yeah.
He's saying plots. I think he did a lot of heavy lifting in the drawing department. Or
I think so,
maybe
too.
Keith Giffen's just such a biter of Bisley's style that like it bled over into his stuff. I think a Trencher is way more visually awesome to look at.
it's so much
than
more
this.
fun.
Yes.
It's-
and frenetic and
It has all so all of these have energy
yes.
in what it's unbottled. Like it's not a presentation
Yeah.
in like a final sense. And my argument, I guess, would be I think the energy of comics
Right.
can be immediately translated to you without having to read them.
Yes.
And that could be an entry point. But I definitely agree where that is a kind of trash comic.
It's pure trash. And I don't understand. They have Alan Grant credited for dialogue. So Keith Giffen, plots it, quote unquote.
I wonder if
I think
they
he probably fucking,
wrote the whole thing.
wrote and drew a lot of it. Handed off to Bisley for the stunt
Yeah.
casting. This is fanfic here. Don't come at me.
We
I'm
don't
just
really
going
know.
I'm going off of horsey sense here.
But
If
at this time, hot shotting was a thing.
of course, and
Hot
Bisley
shotting was a thing.
Bro, this is what is this? This is fucking 1992. I don't know if How the Gods Kill came out yet, but from the Danzig album.
Yeah.
He did Thrall Demon Sweat Live, and like again, if you weren't there, you won't know. Thrall Demon Sweat Live is, I think, Danzig's best-selling.
Oh, no
Yeah,
way.
it's like an EP because it was cheaper, and because the CD looks fucking awesome. And so if you want something that, even though it's like an EP, it's still like the shit. Anyways, so Bisley's stuff is like super iconic,
Yeah.
and awesome for sure. But this is not a comic. This is like
It's it's like kind of like a product.
and I don't know. It's like so long as there was splash pages that the artists themselves could sell, make money on top of making money,
Right.
And like I don't know. I guess if I'm 10, I'm like loving this, right? Because there's like all those chains wrapped around his arms.
Which I was this comic is from my like original collection, like of what I was grabbing from when I was like 6.
And it's like overworked, but it's overworked in a way like you're looking at these background characters and you're like, oh, I could do that.
Yeah, yeah.
And like, it's just the stuff a 10-year-old wants to see, which is like, guys shooting comically large guns at each other and
Blood splattering, ink splattered everywhere.
Yeah, just totally something you would just love to trace, and like thousands and thousands of bullet casings. And
Yeah.
I don't know what it was that just like absorbs a young person's brain like that.
It's that fucking riffage, man. Just like
Yeah, overworked and just
like I feel like that would be the translation into he's just playing that heavy fucking blues fuzzy.
and then I just opened a random page like, what is the background here? What is where does this take place?
Yeah,
You will
dude,
never know.
digitally colored, it seems like.
Oh yeah, like this is so like just I don't know, cynical, I guess would be how I would put it, because these are grown men and professionals, and
they're probably thinking, well, this is just gonna be on some like 10-year-old's pull list.
right,
You know?
right, or just there is the opposite of a person put into this.
Yeah.
It's outsider in the sense that like if you gave it to someone, they would, and they didn't have context and didn't, grow up going to conventions and seeing like what a Lobo fan looks like,
Yeah.
and like never saw Avengers Unlimited or whatever, and they're just like, or Justice League Unlimited,
Yeah.
and like they have no context for what Lobo is. They would look at this, you scratch all the names off and everything, they'd be like, this is fucking psychotic. Like,
Yeah.
this is, if they,
It's unhinged.
yeah, if I would kind of wish it was just like, a Comico or something like that, Comico joint or some like, black and white boom kind of like hack thing spit out that you could find in a quarter bin. It would be cool. But because it's like,
Like an odd find.
because it's such a big platform, it's a major, like, it's like when a big blockbuster movie comes out and you're like, this is fucking odd. Like,
Yeah.
Wicked, the movie. If you don't have any context, you're just watching Wicked raw, like context. You're like, what the fuck?
What is
am I
this?
doing? Why are they singing? Who are these people? Why does it look like this? It's so weird.
Right.
But, because we live in this culture and we know who Ariana Grande is and we're subject to the marketing campaign, it's like, it's not that weird. It's,
The meta of it
it's
is
very normal.
Yeah.
But if you didn't have that context, it'd be fucking bizarre. I wish you could have that. You could decontextualize this Lobo comic, or I wish I could at least, to just be like, what the fuck is this? But because it's like this, I just seeing someone else write the dialogue makes me so mad. It's like, what the?
Yeah.
How did you need someone else to do this? Like, how haphazardly and just dashed out was this shit?
Was it made in a weekend?
Oh yeah, no, it just shitting it out, and it's not.
Yeah.
And Paisley's art is awesome, and Keith Gifford's art is awesome. Like, for sure, it's cool to look at. I respect it. It's just like, I don't know. I just wish it was them. It's just again, it's a cynicism to me that just clouds this one.
It feels like what you would submit in music. It's like you're just kind of submitting like the same kind of shit that you've made before, just maybe in a different key, and then you're just kind of
or it's like, like you want to make it in music, you got to make bumper music, like music for
there you go.
TBS to play in between blues
There you go.
licks and like, or what is it when you go on YouTube and it's just like Kanye type beat,
the little nuggets, those sound nuggets,
rage type beat, and you just like put it out for people to show what you can do or whatever. It's like a demo reel.
Yeah.
But again, this was a summer blockbuster essentially, so it's like,
and that's kind of why that was the last pick that I had, because I wanted to get you four in the same house almost, like it's just raw, and maybe it because they don't make, like I said earlier, they don't make sense to me. Even that the Shatter one and stuff, like that one was the first computer made comic.
If I man, this is a crazy statement to say. I think if I had to pick one that I liked, well, if I was like, what would I read more of? Mm-hmm. I would probably say the Jack Kirby one to see more Kirby art. Yeah. But if I kind of like was curious, like, okay, this is a story, I like where this one is going, it would be this Shatter one. I mean, I don't know. I keep going back to movies, but like obviously Blade Runner is like the reason this comic exists.
For sure.
It's noir, and it's like, uses a lot of the same, there's probably stills you could like, because I would, this, what year is this?
I think it's 85 or something.
Yeah. So probably old boy's got a VHS copy of Blade Runner, and you can like pause the frames and lift
put it
stuff
up on the screen.
I don't know how this is bullshit, this computer drawn or computer created comic, because it's the fucking colorist who's doing
for sure,
watercolors or either water paint or colored markers that's like making this coherent. The dot matrix look of it is fucking cool as shit. Like, it's, I could definitely see like, the vaporwave kids getting their hold on this and losing their mind, but it looks fucking awesome. Like the dot matrix stuff. I almost would rather see it black and white just to make it even grimier. I don't know how I would love, I fear even finding out how they did this. If I had to know how many hours it took for them to whatever primitive ass jank 1985.
I think it was a Mac Paint.
Bro, it's nuts that it looks as good as it does. But it does absolutely look good. And again, you could tell it falls apart once they have to do backgrounds because there's some shit where they're just having fun.
Yeah, I feel like the colorist was like, what the fuck is this part?
Right.
Like, I don't know the depth of field on this like section or whatever.
Yeah.
But persistence of vision, man.
Yeah, and was there a number 2? Because these things do.
Yeah.
Just.
I have dude, if you like that one, because that's, for being honest, that was my favorite of the bunch.
Yeah.
Like I do like the Girl Crazy one, but that's me reading it as a whole.
Right.
And I just think with that one, with Shatter, it falls apart after a couple issues.
Of course.
Because I think they were super hyped on the technology at first, and
Yeah.
I bet you it kind of just slowed things down. But that's got the kind of like the classic genre aesthetic. It fits like the genre while also, I think, elevating the genre in a sense.
Yeah, it's very like, pulp detective with the, sci-fi jargon thrown in. It's not particularly good, like from a...
The story-wise,
but that art, man, it fits that kind of story so well. And there is something kind of like comforting in the familiarity of like, I mean, I do fucking love Blade Runner. Everyone loves Blade Runner. I'm not gonna, I'll fall in line with the herd on that one. You know, like it's cool, man. It's a weird detective story with gene splicing and fucking robots and shit.
And kind of like you said, Ronin earlier.
Yeah.
That was such a that was on everyone's mind. 1984. Kind of thing. Like, I don't know. I'm glad you dug that one. That was like,
and it's it's a gimmick, obviously, the art technique, but it matches the story they're telling. It complements it. You have like the aesthetic cohesion,
right?
It runs through it. So yeah, it was definitely interesting, but it's still kind of garbage,
Yeah. Which is like,
take away the weird dot matrix art, and it
might have fallen flat a little.
Yeah.
Well, it would. I think it as a whole, it works.
Yes,
because of the art is kind of on point for the kind of story they're trying to tell, even though that story is sort of tired and like been so kind of it was just like a cover of like other kind of things.
A pastiche.
A pastiche, if we go back to proper terminology.
So I wanted to impress you with my pick. I had to like. Dude. I'm really shocked you hadn't heard of this before. Eltonville was like so Evan Dorkin had Milk and Cheese, which was like a huge,
which I love that comic,
banger. And I swear if there wasn't an Eltonville backup story in Milk and Cheese, then it was probably in Dork, which was like an anthology that kind of collected a lot of his odds and ends. It was like still a single issues, floppies or whatever.
Yeah.
But within those would just be kind of oddball short stories, and I think this one works great. If you can read 3 or 4 pages of that are just, it's all words, it's all writing, and it all is kind of hinged on his knowledge of this world. Like the trivia contest, which,
dude, that fucking clinched it for me.
Yes, and. It's like there's 2 things happening there. One, it's him flexing that like he really does know this shit.
Yeah.
2, that's from like 94, I think, if I'm not tripping. And so it's like, it's not like Wikipedia, coolest facts. It's like,
exactly. You couldn't just freely look this stuff up that he was saying. It was really inside baseball sort of shit.
100%. And so this is like a collection of all of those stories, which is weird because it goes like because some of these are written after, internet fandom, and some of them are written like somewhat recently. And he's put it to bed. He's like, he makes it pretty clear he doesn't want to do these anymore.
I think on the last one he says, the club is over finally, and like signs it off, Evan Dorkin.
Because it's like a fan favorite, but it's also like A, probably annoying to write, B, like you know, and they made it. There is a pilot that you can look up on YouTube. That
I saw that today.
Yeah, which is like awesome, and you really do wish. Again, you wish there was more, but I understand his problem where it's like, bro, I'm being mean, A,
Yeah.
and B, this guy doesn't exist anymore, and that to me is what I kind of love about it, is that it is such a good representation of the pre-internet
Yeah.
fandoms, you know, which I'm always drawn towards. Like,
Yeah.
I think almost in any regard, like, I don't know, there was like Velvet Underground fanzines in like the 70s and 80s. And it's like, no matter what it is, like you have to be so deep into that world. And again, there's no like platform that someone else made for you.
Mm-hmm.
You're just like putting together mailing lists, and like it's astonishing the like level of dedication you have to have. And the 4 characters in here that make up the Eltingville Club, like they are very much so like
We all
dedicated.
know
Yes.
at least one of these guys.
Of course. Yeah, the horror guy is like, I'm not too far from that myself.
That guy was fucking hilarious. I honestly identified mostly with the fantasy kid.
Oh yeah, well he's the nice one. You have to pick the nice guy.
I just more identified with him getting bullied.
Yeah. The nice guy in the mean friend group. And then it does work as like just a general, even if you take the fandom stuff away, I think like Evan Dorkin's characters are like well written enough,
Yeah.
I guess, to where it's like, I don't know, the group dynamics works in and of itself. It's
They're believable.
yes, absolutely.
And each one has like volume as far as like actually being a fleshed out character. Because I think there was a afterword in there, and he talks about how all of the situations were pulled from real life,
Absolutely.
except for like the fucking
Really far out stuff.
the crazy like when they destroyed the comic shop or whatever. It's just, you feel like those had to be real.
Yeah.
All of that stuff. Like,
And it's so like it's also such a snapshot. I think of these 2 panels. I'll read from it, and if you know the comic, you know it, and if you don't know it, maybe this will. I urge you to go out and check it out. I don't know what year this story
Highly
is
recommend
from
it.
exactly. Probably like mid 94 to 95, so 95ish. I don't know what you're so upset about, Bill. I mean, we missed Star Trek today, but we can catch it tomorrow. And look at all this other great shit we had to choose from. I mean, come on. Every movie out right now is either science fiction or horror or a cartoon or some shooting and killing thing. This is the greatest time ever to be a kid in America, to be us in America. And it only gets better, guys. Judge Dredd, Tank Girl, Mask 2, Batman Forever, Spider-Man, new Star Wars, not to mention all the related games and toys and stuff. So why are we fighting when life is so good?
what's on the horizon is not so fucking.
So great. I mean, yeah, and it's like and I think it's because I think Dorkin is that kind of a very specific kind of like toothless brand of feminist where he's just like, girls rock.
Yeah.
And so he's like very, like he kind of, I don't know. It's I would much rather have like that level of guy than the fucking red-pilled manosphere guy. Don't get me wrong, but it is you can feel that ire come out as the stories go on, and he's like just starts to do instead of maybe lovable caricatures, they turn into like straw men, where he's just like the vitriol towards women comes out, and that's probably honestly just too much exposure to that toxic side of fandom.
I think people pulled that out. Like he had to fucking put that on the page.
Of course.
I bet you people in those spheres.
And to see as time goes on, like there's this kind of meta narrative happening of this guy who is involved in this world, obviously turned from like, these are the losers, let me kind of poke fun at them, but you kind of love them because they're cool to be like, these guys fucking suck. Like they start saying worse and worse things.
It gets so dark.
The disparity between like the good, the nice guys in the group, the genuine nice characters, and just the not even like evil, but just the benignly, like how fandom can just turn you into a benign tyrant and make you such a monster if you let it. I guess it's it's a great comic. I've always really liked it. I didn't want to go too pretentious. I was like, it was so funny. I was between this and this P. Craig Russell adaptation of the Ring cycle, and I was like, you know what?
That would be so gnarly.
It's a fucking amazing comic. I might hit you with it eventually, but it's also a lot of reading to do, and I think this is like a manageable amount. And you just keep it is because talking about like old EC comics and how dense they were with words, and then getting to a comic like this, which is equally dense, but it's like maybe just the way it's written is just so I don't know.
It feels naturalistic.
Yes,
yeah,
that's it. And so it is like you're involved in the conversations as you're reading it.
Especially, I knew a good amount of the shit. I'm not flexing at all. I'm just saying, like, we grew up. We are in a time where some of this stuff is like almost common knowledge in a sense. Right. But back then it wasn't. It was a thing to flex.
Yeah, and it's like I don't know. It's I've read it several times too. It's such like a one-trick pony. It's like a gimmick, but it's the same time. It's like I don't know. Every couple of years I'll break it open and read it again. And I reread it before we recorded this, and I was like, "No, this is still really fun to read." You forget half of it, and then it's just just strong dialogue, strong characters. This is, to me, this is like my favorite Evan Dorkin comics.
This stuff,
and it's short, but it doesn't overstay its welcome. You could see if they were like had to keep if he wrote it into the ground, it would get kind of tiresome.
I think that he got out at the perfect time,
right?
and actually, my favorite one in there was the arts kids, the art school kids.
Yeah, so that was him kind of like because that was during that like alternative press expo, like when those artsy comics were like on the rise in terms of like public consciousness, and like just had to show that just because he's from that side or affiliated with that side, you might think maybe he's he's not going to turn the screws on him, but then he turns it around and has the kids geeking out over Spiegelman instead of
and I like the little details of like they have a fake quote from Art Spiegelman, and then they have a fake quote from Art Spiegelman's wife, not even her actual name, which I think her name is Francois Mowley, something like that.
There we go.
Which those are the comics that I grew up like being into.
Yeah.
And I thought I was so fucking sick for being into those comics.
Yeah, to see like that it's kind of it's shitty. It can be shitty on all sides. It's essentially about toxic fandom, whether it's for dorky media, or if it's for art house media. It's still about kind of turning the screws to the people and the inherent comedy that comes from that.
It's like the just enough to get yourself in trouble is like a quote that I grew up being told often. And I think that that's part of the kind of fandom where the fervor is like at an all-time high.
Yes.
Because it's like, witness me, I'm a fucking artsy fucking mafia. Like, I'm in the art mafia.
I know this shit, and all these plebeians down there don't. And I guess, it's kind of interesting to think of that the artsy group is like creating, and this is sort of a part of nerddom that I think is interesting, that there is a kind of nerd that is very higher, like just bound to their place in the hierarchy. The creators create, and you, the lowly person below, must suffer whatever they say happens to She-Hulk this month. It's like those hierarchies are so meaningful to you, I guess, and like your place in it is to either suffer if these creators take it somewhere you don't want to go, or just look at I like comic book movies generally speaking, but like I don't look at them like I'm not like so what do you think's going to happen next? Who is it going
Right.
to be? Do you
Yeah.
think they're going to bring this person in? Do you think they're going to bring? Here's my theory. I mean, there's people when the movie versions of the IP come out, that's like you are so far beyond the realm of like being able to engage artistically with it.
It has to be a different animal.
Yeah, it is very, and I think that's what it is ultimately is the hierarchy thing. It's like they create and I consume. And on an artist, and I think the artsier level is more just like, hey, we're all artists here. We're all creating. We're all making stuff. Like if you did a mini comic, you would be comfortable sending it to, anyone who does your favorite fan and graphics book. Like, hey, look at this. Whereas like you might be like, oh, I could never write a Marvel script, but here's my theory on what they should do with fucking Nightwing or whatever.
Here's my fanfic.
Yeah, exactly. And it just stays there, and there's no real like, part where you take that to the next level, and that's kind of the interesting disparity between he's poking fun at both groups, but even in poking fun at them, one group is strictly collecting and consuming and worshiping, and the other is greedily trying to get their foot in the door and take and have something for themselves, and they have that little bit of envy and evil in them.
And that's why I think it was a little more like, I would say the word is insipid. Like the group is a little more like, why not me?
Right.
Whereas the other guys, the other guys are just proud and like they really value like this fucking made up fantasy. It doesn't live in reality, but yet it does. It's very real to all these guys,
and it's a little bit of Eltingville in all of us. No, not so different, you or I.
Not at all, man. I really identified with these guys. I mean, not even. It's like not like even like the shameful parts of like fandom. It's like, no, it is kind of funny when you come across those kind of guys and you're like, you know what, man, that's cool for you. I'm not going to be as...
It did definitely have a lot more charm when you had to put more effort into it, which was that. In a post-internet era, it is kind of boring, and even like the modern manifestation of it, which is like, doing the podcast and complaining about what they're doing with so-and-so, or having a YouTube channel where you put on the most curved brim hat in the world and talk about
fucking echo chamber of like nonsense,
rage bait, etc. Like
there you go.
That is, I put a gun to my head, boring. But I fucking, proper D&D campaign, or like, Star Trek fanzines from back in the day. Cool as shit.
Super fun. I mean, dude, I really appreciate that you gave me something that you loved.
Yeah.
And like, don't get me wrong, I love those comics.
Well, I had to impress Senpai over here. Come on now. I had to,
Kohai.
I had to, come on.
Dude.
Didn't want to come off like a chump.
Oh, man.
I think because you gave me such garbage to read, now I feel a little more comfortable. Maybe I will slide some Chuck Dixon Nightwing your way. And
dude, I'm all for fucking all of that stuff,
yeah,
man. Shadowhawk. Give me some fucking Shadowhawk.
He breaks their backs. How crazy is that, bro? He's not like your grandpa's superhero at all.
Oh, man.
But, I think I'm probably out of gas today.
Yeah,
I'm
same, man.
Excited for the future. It was fun times.
That was a good one.
All right, a fist bump.
Fist bump to Colin Knight. Clack.
Yes, an Audible podcast fist bump. And if anyone's listening to this, which is a big old question mark, I'm shocked.
I'm sure you are.
A little offended. A little sad.
Yeah.
You need help.
You need some help.
So, why read comics? Maybe it's the storytelling. Maybe it's the art. And maybe we answered that ultimate question. But who's keeping score? That's it for War on Comics. If you got a comic that changed your life, or at least mildly improved your afternoon, let us know. See you next time.